And if that's the thing. If people have always said the number one concern that people have with the military-industrial complex is sending young men to die in a war that's unnecessary for profit while you are in an air-conditioned office, right? That was during Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Who was it? McGovern? Did McGovern say that? But it was a very powerful speech. He said, I'm tired of watching these old men in air-conditioned offices send young men to die in these unnecessary wars.
Actually,
So if you're willing to be out there too, that's a very different thing. It's a very different thing.
I mean, some people make the argument that a president should moderate how much they do that because
You could die.
You could die, but it also wears on it to make compromised decisions in the realm of geopolitics and in the realm of war. You have to have a bit of coldness. If you really feel the pain of soldiers, you may make unwise decisions.
In terms of diplomatic decisions?
In terms of, for example, you've seen a lot of people die, children die, and if you've seen enough, the idea of quote-unquote peace is a dirty word.
Right.
You want justice.
Isn't that a problem right now, not just in Ukraine, but also in Gaza?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing that the sheer number of people that died that had nothing to do with it is crazy. It's crazy. I think the most recent estimate, and they don't even know because there's so many people that are under rubble, the most recent estimate was somewhere north of 60,000 people. And how many of them are kids? Like, what's the number of kids that have been killed by missiles that had done nothing wrong? Like, what's that number? And those kids have families. And those kids have mothers and brothers and sisters and some people that lived and some people that died. And whoever makes it out of that, you want to radicalize somebody. You want to radicalize somebody to just want nothing but revenge. I can think of no better way. No better way, you know?
And here Donald Trump is tasked with going in there and trying to make peace. I think I'm pretty optimistic about just knowing the skill set of all the people involved in Israel-Palestine, in Russia-Ukraine. I'm pretty optimistic about.
I can't believe those people, those hostages are still alive. How many of them are still alive now?
I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's crazy that they were not freed sooner.
The whole thing's horrible from top to bottom, including all the people that have decided what happened, people that are saying it was definitely a false flag. Like, boy, these things are complicated. It's definitely, like, whenever something horrible happens and someone fucked up, Israel's the most protected place on earth. It's one of the most secure countries on earth. For them to let something like that happen is just a huge fuck up. But what I had heard was that there was also a lot of troops that were stationed near where there were protests. So there was a lot of protests about Netanyahu before October 7th happened. Most people aren't even aware of. There was hundreds of thousands of people in the streets protesting Netanyahu before October 7th. So then October 7th comes, and then, all of a sudden, now whenever you have any sort of military engagement, you're at war right now. When those things happen, one of the first things that happens is all the protests and all the bullshit stops because now a bunch of people got killed. And when anything like that happens and you are now involved in a countrywide assault on this other country, everything else gets put aside. And so the big conspiracy fear has always been when a leader knows that they're going to get pushed out, they'll start a false flag or start a war. So they look at October 7th and they say they let that happen. Or they say they had knowledge of it, they knew it was going to happen, they knew it, but they wanted an excuse to raise Gaza. They wanted an excuse to just have a full-on bombing campaign against Hamas.
I mean, you definitely need to look at the incentives there. That is one of the concerns in Ukraine for President Zelensky. The prospects of ending the war, because right now the country's unified. If you end the war and you have elections, now you have to face a lot of the consequences internally about the potential discovery of corruption, about the suspension of democracy, about all of these things. And the same thing with Netanyahu, who, by the way, also they want to do a 3-hour podcast with me. I talked to him before October 7th for an hour. I regret talking to him for an hour. One of the things I really learned a lot from you and from myself, you can't do. One of the things I really don't like, what happened with me talking to Donald Trump, is like 40 minutes with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like it was a mistake. They didn't really. There was a.
I was almost willing to do that with Kamala Harris.
Well,
I was
Kamala's
entertaining. I was entertaining the 45-minute one. I was entertaining because I was like, maybe if I could just come in at a 10, just like work my brain up, like really come in and just engage with her real quick. I just wanted to get. I wanted to get loose. I don't. The problem is like I want to see how you are as a real person.
I think actually, genuinely, with you and Kamala Harris, I think 45 minutes is horrible, but I think you're so skilled and like passionate. Just like it's fun. It's fun to talk to you. I think you would just end up being much, much longer. That's the hope.
If that's the hope, yeah. But there would be questions though, and some questions would be very complicated, like the immigration question. Like I would say, what's happening? Like what is happening? What do you think that there should be limitations to this? Do you think it should be stopped outright? Do you think we should round up all the people that we know that are terrorists that made it across? Are we keeping track of them? Do we know how many? Do we know what happened? Do we know why it happened? Why are people opposed to the idea of cracking down on Border Patrol, making more soldiers available, putting walls up everywhere? Like, what is the reason to not do this? Like, tell me what you're thinking. And when people start talking about labor, they talking about bringing in labor and then our population is lower. Like Chuck Schumer brought that up. Talk about like, we need workers. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are we saying? Is that really what the problem is? That Americans aren't willing to do jobs? And you want to bring in illegal people? How about just make legal immigration easier for poor people that are trying to get over here? How about just scan them, screen them, make sure that they're not fucking murderers, make sure they're not cartel members, and then let them in easier? Like, wouldn't that be a better way to do it, to vet people? But the idea of not vetting people just doesn't make any sense at all. That would have been a problem. That conversation would have been a problem because it doesn't make any sense at all. And I'm a grandchild of immigrants. I believe in immigration. I think America is the fucking shining light in the world. Like if you can get here, you can actually make something happen. There's not a caste system. They actually reward people from, started from the bottom, now we're here. Like that's a thing here. Although that's Drake, he's Canada. But it's that thought.
That's